We are going over how to calculate the length of a rafter. So for this example, the span of the house is 10 feet. The slope of the roof is a 512 roof with a 4-inch overhang. So in this space, we're going to quickly draw what the house looks like. It's a gable end roof. So it has a triangular top here. The span, meaning from the outside edge to the outside edge here, that is 10 feet. So that means that the run from the outside edge to the center is 5 feet. This is a 512 pitch on the roof, and the overhang here is 4 inches. So the run is always half of the span, so that's why it's 5. For the first question, the common rafter length per foot of run, that's taken right off of a framing square. So if you look at the first line on the blade, the common rafter length per foot of run, you go down to where you see the 5-inch mark, because it's a 512, and the first number you see is 13. So we have 13 inches. Draw the triangle showing this. So you have a run of 12 inches, a rise of 5 inches, and you would recognize this as a right triangle, which is the Pythagorean theorem. If you do 12 squared plus 5 squared, 144 plus 25, you do get 169. The square root of 169 is 13 inches. This is just a tool that a carpenter would use on a construction site rather than using a calculator to do the Pythagorean theorem. It tells them in decimal inches what the values are. So draw all the steps of the rise and run. So this would represent 1 foot over, 5 inches up. To do all of them, you need to go 1 foot over, 5 inches up, 1 foot over, 5 inches up, 1 foot over, 5 inches up, 1 foot over, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5th time to get all the way. So we're going to draw that out a little bit larger. So it's 1 over, so 12 inches over, 5 inches up, 12 inches over, 5 inches up, over 12, up 5, over 12, up 5, over 12. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, up 5, over 12, up 5. So that's drawing all the steps of the rise and run. Because the slope of our roof here, that's the rafter right there. Each of these are 13 inches, 13 inches, 13 inches, 13 inches, 13 inches. And don't forget we have 4-inch overhang right here. So let's go on to the next question, then we'll go on to E. So we know that the total run of our house is 5 feet. And from this diagram, you can see that the total rise, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 inches. That's the answer down here, 25 inches. So the total common rafter length, what we do is we take this whole value, 13 inches times 5, right? Because it's 5 times, so it's a little too far. So it's 13 inches times 5. Don't forget, you have to add the 4-inch overhang down here, so plus 4 inches, plus the ridge beam, the beam that's at the top of the house right here, that the rafters all connect into, that is a regular 2x, meaning it's 1.5 inches thick. Well, in order to account for that, you have to actually subtract half the thickness. Half the thickness, so you have one rafter coming on the left, one rafter coming in on the right, so that's why it's half taken away on both of them. So you subtract out 3/4 of an inch. Oops, 3/4 of an inch. So 13 times 5, that is 65 inches, plus 4 inches, minus, we can do decimals real quick. So 69 would be, then minus 0.75, 68.25 inches. 68 inches, convert that to feet. So we have 5 feet, 8 1/4 inch. For the rafter lines, 1 through 5, we're going to show you how to do this on the actual board, but the way it will kind of show up here is there's your first line, line 1. That's using your framing square for your 512 slope. you'll go over your the first length, which is the 5 marks of 13, which is your 65 inches. Draw on your second line at the same slope using your framing square. Then you'll add your overhang of 4 inches right there. Try to keep the colors consistent. Another line with your framing square. And then again, you'll use your framing square to go up. So this is the second line here. This is the third line. You'll go up 1.5 inches using your framing square. Go again at the slope determined by the framing square for your fourth line here. This represents the bird's mouth that will be cut out, so the rafter sits on top of the top plate. And then your final line, so just go back a second, this is 1.5 inches. And then your final line here, you go over, from your first line, you go over 3/4 inch and draw in your fifth line right there. And that's how you do your calculations to find out your total rafter length, total common rafter length. For this example, it's 5 feet, 8.25 inches. And we'll go over this.
The tongue, which is the smaller side, will always be in your left hand, and it equals the rise. Blade will always be in your right hand, and equals the run. So if you look at a framing square, we're always holding it like a check mark. So this would be backwards, this would be wrong, however you want to do it. It always looks like this, check mark. With the tongue in the left hand and the blade in the right hand. Then when we go to get our board, we're going to work from left to right. So we lay out our lines from the left side of the board to the right side of the board. On our framing square, we only use the outside numbers here. We will not be reading on the inside of the check mark, only the outside numbers. We'll use the bottom edge. In this case right now it's kind of painted green. We'll use the bottom edge to lay out our rise and run, and we'll use the top edge for our measurements. So step one, the ridge beam cut. It's the first line on the far left of your board. Come all the way over. In this case we're at 5 and 12. My fingertips are touching 5 and 12 on the bottom line of the rafter. I'm going to slide that over until I get to 0 on the top. That's my 0 mark. And I draw one line. That's line 1. Our next line, line number 2, measure and mark the common rafter length and mark it at the same slope. Our common rafter length we calculated on our worksheet is 65 inches. Over to 65. Make a dot on the top edge. All measurements are done on the top edge of the board, not the bottom. I'm at 65 inches. Measure and mark the common rafter length. This will be the whole length of the rafter. Is 5, 12 again. And we make sure the top edge is on our mark. Notice the framing square never rotates, it just slides back and forth down the rafter. Number 3, add the length of the overhang and mark it at the same slope. Our overhang length is 4 inches. Right there. You can use the bottom edge of the framing square, put it at the line, and mark a dot at 4 inches. Come back to where you were before. Same exact angle, 5, 12, slide down, make sure 5 and 12 are touching, and mark line 3, your overhang mark. Line 4, measure up 1.5 inches along line 2. Here's line 2. Here's 1.5 inches. This tongue of the framing square is exactly 1.5. Put a dot there. Framing square goes back as a check mark, back to 5, 12. Same exact place as the last 3 lines. We slide all the way over until we get to 5, 12, and our dot shows up along the run of our framing square on the blade. Mark that line. That's your bird's mouth, exactly 1.5 up. Line number 5, subtract half the length of the ridge beam from line 1. In our case, that'll always be 3/4 inch, 0.75. I put a dot at 0.75. Framing square's back at the check mark. 5, 12, on the dot, mark my line. That's line 5.